Good morning, philosophers. Feeling a little bit better today, in part because I'm pretty sure 70% of what I've been experiencing health-wise has been allergies. Maybe not all, but a large part of it. And man, I have rediscovered the glory of Flonase. It is amazing. If anybody has allergies out there, check out Flonase. Anyway, this concludes the commercial portion of today's show. Let's get into it. Very well, gentlemen. This and maybe other similar things is what I have to say in my defense. Perhaps one of you might be angry as he recalls that when he himself stood trial on a less dangerous charge, he begged and implored the jurymen with many tears, that he brought his children and many of his friends and family into court to arouse as much pity as he could, but that I do none of those things, even though I may seem to be running the ultimate risk. Thinking of this, he might feel resentful toward me and angry about this, cast his vote in anger, especially because you're pointing it out. If there is such a one among you, I do not deem there is, but if there is, I think it would be right to say in reply, my good sir, I too have a household, and in Homer's phrase, I am not born from oak or rock, but from men, so that I have a family, indeed 3 sons, men of Athens, of whom one is an adolescent, while 2 are children. Nevertheless, I will not beg you to acquit me by bringing them here. Why do I do none of these things? Not through arrogance, gentlemen, nor through lack of respect for you. Whether I am brave in the face of death is another matter, but with regard to my reputation and yours and that of the whole city, it does not seem right to me to do these things, especially at my age and with my reputation. For it is generally believed, whether it be true or false, that in certain respects Socrates is superior to the majority of men. Now, if those of you who are considered superior, be it in wisdom or courage or whatever other virtue makes them so, are seen behaving like that, it would be a disgrace. Yet I have often seen them do this sort of thing when standing trial, men who are thought to be somebody, doing amazing things as if they thought it a terrible thing to die, and as if they were to be immortal if you did not execute them. I think these men bring shame upon the city, so that a stranger too would assume that those who are outstanding in virtue among the Athenians, whom they themselves select from themselves to fill offices of state and receive other honors, are in no way better than women. What? I'm going to read that again. I think these men bring shame upon the city, so that a stranger too would assume that those who are outstanding in virtue among the Athenians, whom they themselves select from themselves to fill offices of state and receive other honors, are in no way better than women. You should not act like that, men of Athens. Those of you who have any reputation at all, and if we do, you should not allow it. You should make it very clear that you will more readily convict a man who performs these pitiful dramatics in court, and so makes the city a laughingstock, than a man who keeps quiet. Quite apart from the question of reputation, gentlemen, I do not think it right to supplicate the jury and to be acquitted because of this, but to teach and persuade them. It is not the purpose of a juryman's office to give justice as a favor to whomever seems good to him, but to judge according to law, and this he has sworn to do. We should not accustom you to perjure yourselves, nor should you make a habit of it. This is irreverent conduct for either of us. Do not deem it right for me, men of Athens, that I should act toward you in a way that I do not consider to be good or just or pious, especially by Zeus, as I am being prosecuted by Meletus here for impiety. Clearly, if I convinced you by my supplication to do violence to your oath of office, I would be teaching you not to believe that there are gods, and my defense would convict me of not believing in them. This is far from being the case, gentlemen, for I do believe in them, as none of my accusers do. I leave it to you and the God to judge me in the way that will be best for me and for you. Have a little drink here. Oh, man. Oh, man. All right. The jury now gives its verdict of guilty, and Meletus asks for the penalty of death. There are many other reasons. This is Socrates again, I believe. There are many other reasons for my not being angry with you for convicting me, men of Athens, and what happened was not unexpected. I am much more surprised at the number of votes cast on each side, for I did not think the decision would be by so few votes, but by a great many. As it is, a switch of only 30 votes would have acquitted me. 30, so that puts it at... What is that? Wow. That's really close. I think it was out of 500, so a 30-vote sway. I think myself that I have been cleared of Meletus's charges, and not only this, but it is clear to all that if Anytus and Lycon had not joined him in accusing me, he would have been fined 1,000 drachmas for not receiving 1/5 of the votes. He assesses the penalty at death. So be it. What counter-assessment should I propose to you, men of Athens? Clearly it should be a penalty I deserve, and what do I deserve to suffer or to pay because I have deliberately not led a quiet life, but have neglected what occupies most people? Wealth, household affairs, the position of general or public orator or other offices, the political clubs and factions that exist in the city. I thought myself too honest to survive if I occupied myself with those things. I did not follow that path that would have made me of no use either to you or to myself. But I went to each of you privately and conferred upon him what I say is the greatest benefit. By trying to persuade him not to care for any of his belongings before caring that he himself should be as good and as wise as possible. Not to care for the city's possessions more than for the city itself, and to care for other things in the same way. What do I deserve for being such a man? Some good, men of Athens, if I must truly make an assessment according to my deserts, and something suitable. What is suitable for a poor benefactor who needs leisure to exhort you? Nothing is more suitable, gentlemen, than for such a man to be fed in the Prytaneum. Much more suitable for him than for any of you who has won a victory at Olympia with a pair or team of horses. The Olympian victor makes you think yourself happy. I make you be happy. Besides, he does not feel... Excuse me. My brain is focused on the beginning of this last paragraph, and so I'm distracted reading on. The part I'm distracted by is the very first couple sentences where Socrates says he assesses the penalty at death. So be it. I think this was supposed to be his opportunity because Meletus had just asked for the death penalty. I think this was supposed to be his opportunity to vie for a lower punishment. And he is just saying, so be it. All right, let me try and continue. Besides, he does not need food, but I do. So, if I must make a just assessment of what I deserve, I assess it at this. Free meals in the Prytaneum. What? When I say this, you may think, as when I spoke of appeals to pity and entreaties, that I speak arrogantly. But that is not the case, men of Athens. Rather, it is like this. I am convinced that I never willingly wrong anyone, but I am not convincing you of this, for we have talked together but a short time. If it were the law with us, as it is elsewhere, that a trial for life should not last one but many days, you would be convinced, but now it is not easy to dispel great slanders in a short time. Since I am convinced that I wrong no one, I am not likely to wrong myself, to say that I deserve some evil, and to make some such assessment against myself. What should I fear? That I should suffer the penalty Meletus has assessed against me, of which I say I do not know whether it is good or bad? Am I then to choose in preference to this something that I know very well to be an evil, and assess the penalty at that? Imprisonment? Why should I live in prison, always subjected to the ruling magistrates, the 11? A fine, and imprisonment until I pay it? That would be the same thing for me, as I have no money. Exile? For perhaps you might accept that assessment? I should have to be inordinately fond of life, men of Athens, to be so unreasonable as to suppose that other men will easily tolerate my company and conversation, when you, my fellow citizens, have been unable to endure them, but found them a burden, and resented them so that you are now seeking to get rid of them. Far from it, gentlemen. It would be a fine life at my age to be driven out of one city after another. For I know very well that wherever I go, the young men will listen to my talk as they do here. If I drive them away, they will themselves persuade their elders to drive me out. If I do not drive them away, their fathers and relations will drive me out on their behalf. Perhaps someone might say, but Socrates, if you leave us, will you not be able to live quietly without talking? Now this is the most difficult point on which to convince some of you. If I say that it is impossible for me to keep quiet because that means disobeying the god, you will not believe me and will think I am being ironical. On the other hand, if I say that it is the greatest good for a man to discuss virtue every day, and those other things about which you hear me conversing and testing myself and others, for the unexamined life is not worth living for men, you will believe me even less. What I say is true, gentlemen, but it is not easy to convince you. At the same time, I am not accustomed to think that I deserve any penalty. If I had money, I would assess the penalty at the amount I could pay, for that would not hurt me. But I have none. Unless you are willing to set the penalty at the amount I can pay, then perhaps I could pay you 1 mina of silver, so that is my assessment. Plato here, men of Athens, and Crito, and Critobulus, and Apollodorus, bid me put the penalty at 30 minas, and they will stand surety for the money. Well then, that is my assessment, and they will be sufficient guarantee of payment. Oh, man. There's 3 pages left, but we're running out of time. I think we're just going to finish it today. Yes, I don't want to have this waiting for me for tomorrow morning. Ugh, I hate this. The jury now votes again and sentences Socrates to death. It is for the sake of a short time, men of Athens, that you will acquire the reputation and the guilt, in the eyes of those who want to denigrate the city, of having killed Socrates, a wise man. For they who want to revile you will say that I am wise even if I am not. Well, that's the truth. If you had waited but a little while, this would have happened of its own accord. You see my age, that I am already advanced in years and close to death. I am saying this not to all of you, but to those who condemned me to death. And to these same ones I say, perhaps you think that I was convicted for lack of such words as might have convinced you, if I thought I should say or do all I could to avoid my sentence. Far from it. I was convicted because I lacked not words, but boldness and shamelessness and the willingness to say to you what you would most gladly have heard from me. Lamentations and tears, and my saying and doing many things that I say are unworthy of me, but that you are accustomed to hear from others. I did not think then that the danger I ran should make me do anything mean, nor do I now regret the nature of my defense. I would much rather die after this kind of defense than live after making the other kind. Neither I nor any other man should, on trial or in war, contrive to avoid death at any cost. Indeed, it is often obvious in battle that one could escape death by throwing away one's weapon and by turning to supplicate one's pursuers. And there are many ways to avoid death in every kind of danger if one will venture to do or say anything to avoid it. It is not difficult to avoid death, gentlemen. It is much more difficult to avoid wickedness, for it runs faster than death. Oh, man. You know what? I think we are going to leave the rest of this for tomorrow. I have a lot to do today, and that is a good line to end on. It is not difficult to avoid death, gentlemen. It is much more difficult to avoid wickedness, for it runs faster than death. Ah, man. Isn't it amazing that the idiocy of the general public can be so strong that it makes you angry thousands of years after the fact? And it's also awesome that Socrates knew that that was going to happen and called it out. Okay. Yesterday, I think I forgot to tell you what my sort of motto for the month is. For the month of April, I think I'm going to go with my personal motto. My personal motto is something I keep on my wrist sort of at all times. It's a Greek phrase, not from anything in particular that I can find. It's a modified, it's like the, for any of you that are familiar with the V for Vendetta movie, there's a Greek phrase on the wall that's close to this one, but it's not the same. Anyway, it is vi veri universum vivus vincam. And it means, by the power of truth, I, a mere mortal, will conquer all of creation. And the way I take conquer to mean is achieve mastery over. And so the theme for this month is to align myself as closely with truth as possible, to eliminate blind spots to my understanding of reality in the world and the people around me, and to use that to better achieve mastery over life for the month of April. And so for today, I'm going to focus like even more narrowly on truth for myself. And what I mean by that is today I'm going to try and spend some time thinking about the current state of me and what is true about me and how that aligns with reality. And if there's anything about me that I want to change, I want to start setting about changing it. And if there's anything that I can't change, I need to sit with that and embrace it as reality and not let it bother me and find ways to make that obstacle into an advantage. I don't want to get into specifics. This isn't, y'all aren't my diary, but that is what I am thinking about today. There's some obstacles that I'm going to have to be dealing with for the next year or so. And if I just let them exist as obstacles that I can do nothing about, it's going to be a constant drain on my happiness. Whereas if I take time today, or maybe this week, I don't know, as long as it takes, and I think about those things, and I recognize what my power is to change those things, and what my power isn't to change those things, and I come to terms with that lack of power to change those things, then that will allow me to focus elsewhere and accept reality for what it is and get it off of my consciousness for the next year. And maybe even come up with a plan for how to work around it or use it to my advantage. Okay, enough babbling. Guys, have a great day.